started. First of all, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar on arresting and reversing cognitive and memory decline with Dave Larson. And I'll introduce him in a moment. I'm Scott Larson. I'm the marketing manager for Psychonline. If you're not familiar with Psychonline, Psychonline is an online platform that provides all the tools and services for mental health care providers to treat patients either in the office or remotely. Dave Larson, who were no relation to me, Scott Larson, but we're grateful to have him with us. He's the education chairman for the American Brain Council, whose mission it is to educate health professionals and the public on what can be done to avoid memory loss, Alzheimer's, and dementia. Mr. Larson holds a double master's degree in family and human development and psychology. He's a former master trainer for the Alzheimer's Association and was a lead site investigator in one of the most significant Alzheimer's research studies ever conducted. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that in his presentation today. He's also a popular instructor on reducing risk for Alzheimer's and other age-related cognitive decline. He's taught more than 80 classes on this topic in 44 states and has additionally taught more than 40 classes internationally for the Department of Defense, where he received a top 3 instructor award for his deep insights, wry humor, and fun classroom style, which we'll get to see here today.
Like I don't know where you got all of that material, Scott. It's been years or so ago since I sent that to you. Anyway, okay.
I don't forget things. So, anyway, yeah. So we're grateful to have him here. As we during the presentation today, if you have questions or anything that you'd like to comment on, please do so in the message area. Which, if you drag your mouse down to kind of the bottom of the screen, you'll see something that says message. You can click on that. And we'll be monitoring messages. And if we don't get to the messages during the presentation, we will have some time at the end for question and answer. We can certainly get to it at that point. So with that, Dave, I'll turn the time over to you for your presentation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity of talking with all of you. Scott, do we have any ideas to how many people are on this?
Right now, I believe there are 15 right
we can be.
I'm sure others will join as we go.
Okay, so who I see there, let's see, there's 3, 4, 5, something like that. So perhaps if you have questions, you can ask them if you're not muted, and we'll see how we progress with this. We're going to be talking, of course, primarily about dementia prevention in this session. But is this? Oh, I need to change it so you can see my slides, because you can't see my slides yet. We were looking at those just a minute ago. But let me do some clicking here so you can see that. Okay. So now, can you all see my slides?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. As I noted, we're going to be talking about dementia primarily, but as you can see from this slide, there's significant overlap between dementia, depression, diabetes. Most of you probably work with individuals that have depression. If you want to try to motivate them, you could suggest to them that if they don't do something about their depression, it can actually double their risk for developing dementia. That probably wouldn't do much for their depression, but the good news is that there is much that can be done. There is significant overlap there, and many of the things that will reduce their risk for depression will reduce their risk for dementia and vice versa. So there's some extra benefits in this presentation. The same protocol we know can also reduce the risk for diabetes, as well as strokes and heart attacks and some types of cancer. So the information has a variety of applications. Just a little bit on the word dementia, because there is a lot of misunderstanding about that. Dementia is not a disease. Obviously, Alzheimer's is, and there are a variety of other diseases, Parkinson's, etc., that can contribute to this. But when we talk about dementia, we're basically talking about the loss of functional abilities. Okay. Memory, of course, being a common one, but not all dementia necessarily affects memory. Frontotemporal dementia, for example, those individuals, the ailment can affect affect, their ability to empathize, for example, more than it does memory. And so some of the people that you work with that have personality disorders or problems with empathy, that might be a type of dementia. But anyway, dementia is the loss of abilities. And as this next slide shows, there are a variety of things that can contribute to or cause dementia. We talk about Alzheimer's, but actually vascular issues are the most common, as Melanie was talking about before we got started here, as well as Parkinson's disease. Lewy bodies is associated with that, and various other things. This is just kind of an overview. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about subjective cognitive impairment. That is, as noted, pre-dementia. That is where an individual notes that their brain just isn't working as good as it used to be. Their memory isn't as good as it used to be. However, if they went to see a doctor, they could still probably do pretty good on whether it's the MOCA or some other introductory cognitive assessment. So others might not be aware, but they're aware of that. And that's where we want to catch people. Mild cognitive impairment, a doctor and other family members will usually pick up that there's something going on here that's not right with mild cognitive impairment. And then it progresses into other types of more serious issues that we refer to as dementia. Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, some of you working with people with alcohol issues might see that. We know that interestingly enough, is a result of a vitamin B1 deficiency in a gene that malfunctions, so they can't metabolize alcohol really well. But I imagine most of you have heard that this phrase, that there is nothing that can be done to prevent, mitigate, or cure Alzheimer's. As Scott noted, for years I worked with the Alzheimer's Association, and that always bothered me. I worked with a program that they set up in about 2009 on how to maintain your brain, and the research then suggested that there was much that could be done, but they continued to stick with this mantra that there's nothing really to mitigate or prevent it, because they wanted people, I think, to contribute to pay money for a medication. But as you'll see, that there is that actually we now know is not, or at least certainly no longer true, and I'll give you the evidence for that in just a little bit. One of the reasons why traditional medicine hasn't done a better job of finding things that reduce dementia is that their model is primarily focused on drugs. But drugs, as you can see there, don't usually provide the biochemistry that cells need or designed to use and require. Drugs are pretty good at stopping things from happening in the body and the brain, but they're not nutrients that can help arrest cell loss or help to restore cells. Pharmaceutical companies fund most of the medical journals, and they do have a definite bias against, that's been shown in a study with Wake Forest and other institutions, that they have a bias against other nutritional or alternative approaches. And so most healthcare professionals never learn about or haven't learned about some of the things going on in some alternative areas that I'm going to be sharing with you that have produced some really interesting results. Let's see. How do we know dementia can be prevented and cognitive decline reversed if caught soon enough? So let's jump into that. Oh, first a little bit about the causes. One of the problems is there are just a wide variety of things that can contribute to dementia. We now know that there are over, last count, over 100 different potential contributing factors in our lifestyles and environment, food, lifestyle, etc. So these are some of them. Some of the basic, more common ones are nutritional deficits, incidental to aging. As we get older, our brain loses the ability to assimilate nutrients as well. And there's some nutrients like SAMe that's very, very important for, or helpful for depression, for example, that the body, the brain synthesizes that actually in the liver. But as we get older, our body doesn't do that quite so well. And a lot of seniors don't eat so well, their diets aren't so good. So anyway, nutritional deficits are a major contributor now, we know, to cognitive decline. And traditional medicine really hasn't been into that so much. In fact, for a while there, they almost implied that nutrition was irrelevant to getting better, but now we know that it plays a very important role, as does physical activity. We'll talk about how these are correlated in a little bit later. Mental activity, it's important to continue mental activity as we get older. Prolonged stress, a high cortisol level can significantly contribute to cognitive decline, as can a wide variety of neurotoxins in our environment. Molds, etc., are growing more prominent, getting a lot more attention. Lyme disease, a variety of things, and over 200 medications that people are prescribed. The common medications, for example, like statin medications used to control cholesterol. We do something called CoQ10 that's very important for producing energy for the brain. And there's a variety of medications that reduce acetylcholine, the basic building block for memories. So anyway, that's there's a lot of contributors in that area. As well as hearing loss, talked about earlier, vision loss, those things have some interesting interplay there. Diabetes is another major ailment that can double, if not quadruple, the risk for cognitive decline, and contributes to vascular issues that are major contributors to cognitive decline, probably even more so, actually, than is Alzheimer's. So one of the first studies we want to talk about here is the Finnish geriatric study to prevent cognitive impairment. That was one of the first. They changed the title on it later, but that was one of the first titles for that study. That was initiated in about 2010 or 11. That was a combined study with institutions from Finland and Sweden got together on this study. You can see there were it was a significant study. If you're trying to develop something for the FDA, you need about 1,000 people in your study to really impress the experts, and so that's one reason why they included over 1,000 people in this study. And all of these were individuals with mild cognitive impairment. Okay, so they were already starting to develop some issues. We know about 50%, 50 to 60% of people with mild cognitive impairment, and it sounds like I have a little bit of that. Will progress to developing some type of dementia. So that tends to go from bad to worse. So they wanted to pick this vulnerable population that were already on the road to Alzheimer's or other types of dementia.
Hey, Dave,
and what they did is they gleaned the insights from all the... Go ahead, Scott.
For some reason, what I'm seeing is the previous slide, not the Finland finger study slide. I don't know if are others seeing the same.
Interesting. Is that true for all of you?
What I see is what causes dementia.
Yeah, so do I. Can you just go back? Yeah.
Okay, let's go to that one. Does that say what causes dementia?
Yes, right now. I see
what causes
okay,
Yes.
Does this show the finger study, the Finland study?
No.
Now we see it.
Yeah. Now it's
Oh, okay. So it sounds like looks like there's a delay. Now you see it?
Yes.
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 Okay. Okay, so we're good. Now let me just go to the next one to make sure this is still working. Well, maybe I'm going to stay here. Let me go back to the finger study. Okay. So you can see that now. So So what they did is they went back and gleaned their insights from previous studies, particularly the Karolinska Institute in Sweden had done some interesting studies on physical activity and mental activity, showing that when you combined those, that had a somewhat of a synergistic effect. There's a lot of, or quite a bit of research that had been done at that point in time on the importance of diet and nutrition. So they divided this group up into two different groups. The one group, they taught them what constituted a brain healthy diet, what was appropriate or helpful physical and mental activities, and social interaction, because they knew all of those could contribute to brain health or healthy cognitive functioning. The other group, they told them to just go see their physicians as per usual and follow their advice. And then, as you can see from the little slide off to the right, for the first while, they continue to decline, okay, which is generally the course. And generally, it takes a few months for these things to kick in. But as time went on, that was initially a 2-year study. As time went on, particularly the individuals in the experimental study where they taught them the healthier lifestyle and what constituted a healthier lifestyle, etc. As you can see, their memory scores improved by 30. Well, I say were 35% better. We can't say that they all improved, but they were 35% better than the placebo group. Their executive function was 83% higher than those in the placebo group, who just were told to see their physicians as per usual, and their processing speed, one of the best indicators of cognitive decline or risk for dementia, was 150% better. Or in other words, that's one of the best indicators of brain health, actually in general there. So as a result of this, now you should be seeing the next slide with a quote, a bit of a quote from Dr. Kivi Pelto. She was the lead investigator in that study from the Karolinska Institute. Can you see that all now, Scott? It says Finland finger study.
Yes, I see that.
Hopefully you can. Okay. So as you can see there, part of her quote was, these findings show that indeed prevention is possible. Indeed was my word, but she noted that these findings, after the first 2 years, noted that these findings show that prevention is possible. Now, every year the Alzheimer's Association conducts a international study, and that was presented to probably the largest study related to Alzheimer's in the world, and that was presented at that study. It was initially, her findings were taken with skepticism because nobody had ever suggested that was possible, that a treatment could achieve the results that she was showing, especially with non-pharmaceutical interventions, basically just lifestyle. But nevertheless, that showed us that there is much that can be done to reduce the risk for progression to dementia, even in those who have cognitive decline. In fact, another study from the Alzheimer's Association, the trajectory study that you can see there, notes that if we can just delay Alzheimer's by 5 years, we could reduce the incidence by half. Now, again, their interventions were 4 different things. And excuse me, I'm going to get another little sip of water here and hopefully clear my throat. In the next class that we have on this in December, we'll talk more about what constitutes a brain healthy diet. Eating more vegetables, less sugar and more vegetables is certainly one of the most important parts of that. Getting more exercise, physical activity, and cognitive activities, particularly learning new things, they found to be particularly helpful, as well as social interaction. That is one of the best cognitive activities that one can do, because that forces them to use what cognitive reserves they have and the things that they have learned to retrieve those, to make new memories, and it's a great brain activity. We know that people, for example, who live on their own, reclusive, a lot of seniors want to stay in their homes, etc. But we know living on your own, especially as we age, is not the best thing for the brain. Mental stimulation is very important there. The next slide you should be seeing is a study by Rush University in Chicago. That was completed just a few years ago with a much larger group that they followed for 9 years. It was not an experimental study like the Karolinska or Finnish study, but in this they focused on identifying 5 healthy lifestyles, practices. As you can see there, again, a healthy diet, not smoking, because we know that smoking is a significant contributor to cognitive decline, that air pollution associated with that. Light to moderate alcohol. Some alcohol for at least some people might have a preventive impact, but too much alcohol can make matters worse. Actually, in some programs, they encourage people to abstain from alcohol if they have any cognitive impairment, but at least limited alcohol use, cognitive stimulation, and again, 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise. And they found, as you can see there, those who adopted 4 out of 5 of these had a 60% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's over that 9-year period. 60% more likely, or 60% less risk, or less likelihood of developing Alzheimer's than those with 0 or only 1 of those practices. So that was, again, very impressive to show that indeed reinforced that Finnish geriatric study, that indeed there is much that can be done to reduce the risk for developing dementia. Okay, and now, by the way, the finger study, it's called, the Finnish geriatric study, is being duplicated in about 9 different countries throughout the world. The Alzheimer's Association finally got on board a year before last and has dedicated a couple of $1 million to that study, which is now going on in parts of the United States, to basically verify these same findings, that by modifying your lifestyle, your diet and lifestyle, there's much that can be done to, again, reduce the risk of progression to dementia. Kind of just to give you some insight, as I mentioned earlier, into how these different things work together. We know, again, that the brain is basically a nutrition hog. It needs a variety of nutrients as well as oxygen, and it's other than the heart, it's the greatest user of energy in the body. So it needs a lot of nutrition, good nutrition and oxygen, to create that energy that the brain needs to perform its various functions, not only, of course, while we're awake, but while we're sleeping. So anyway, diet is very, very important, and nutrition declines as we get older. So you got to get the best nutrients in there. So that's the #1 item. But then if you have poor circulation or digestion, if those nutrients can't, no matter how much you take in your mouth, if they can't get digested, assimilated, and circulated to the brain, that's not going to do you a whole lot of good. So circulation becomes very important in making that happen. And a lot of the best studies in dementia prevention have to do with physical activity and exercise. Though there's some caveats with exercise. People that do a lot of extreme exercise actually might have somewhat higher risk for ailments like Alzheimer's that are related to oxidative stress, as it's called. So antioxidants. If you're going to exercise like doing marathons, etc., you need to up your dosage of antioxidants to compensate for the oxidative stress free radicals that are caused by physical activity, by strenuous activity. And then cognitive activities are very important to put some demands on the body for the assimilation of those nutrients into the brain, where they are needed then to form new connections or networks, etc. All of that, of course, require improved nutrition to make new connections. Whenever people make a new memory, there's actually new connections that are being created there, and you got to have the right nutrients, like omega-3 fatty acids, for example, to make those connections happen. So anyway, and then as we talked about, social interaction reinforces those memories and aids in the creation of new memories. So the brain is very much a use it or lose it organ, we've learned from this research. Now, let's see where we're at in terms of time. I think we're doing pretty good. And now, I noted early on that we know that not only can these same behaviors reduce the risk for dementia and depression, but a variety of other related ailments as well. I just thought I'd throw this slide in from one of the largest studies in the world, the EPIC study that's going on in Europe. I assume that's still going on. These slides were developed about this slide in particular about 8 years ago, but you can see that was a major study going on in Europe, not just in Germany, but other studies. After the first 7 years, they looked at the impact on diet and physical activity, reduced body fat, not smoking, those 4 variables on, as you can see, the others, health parameters there: diabetes, heart attack, strokes, and cancer. And you can see there's just those 4 simple behavioral modifications or lifestyles factors can significantly reduce the risk for diabetes and vascular ailments. We know those diabetes and vascular ailments are some of the most major contributors to brain health and cognitive decline. So interesting research there out of Germany. So the next slide, though, has to do with the question, and I probably should have. Okay, so there's much that can be done to prevent Alzheimer's dementia if caught soon enough, ideally before in that subjective or prior subjective cognitive impairment. If you have a healthy brain, I mean, it's important to be mindful of these practices and employ these different things just to make sure that you never do develop even mild cognitive impairment. But what about those who have developed mild cognitive impairment? What about those like at least one of you who is watching has a family member that's recently been diagnosed with perhaps Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment or worse, vascular dementia, etc. Can anything be done to arrest that decline, or are they just doomed to die of dementia? Well, Dr. Dale Bredesen from UCLA has been working, and many others. He's at the forefront now, but a lot of others have been working on this, particularly for the last decade or two. And he is professor of neurology at UCLA, standard medical doctor. His expectation was, as he got into this research, that they were going to be able to come up with some medication, some pill. They just needed to tweak this or that, and they were going to find a pill that could really put a dent in Alzheimer's, that could arrest the decline, and make the pharmaceutical companies and them a lot of money with this silver bullet, as it were. But as they progressed with their research, actually his wife was more into herbs and nutrition and things like that, and she said, and other lifestyle issues, and said, nah, that's not going to happen. I mean, you're going to find out that this is related to a variety of variables that need to be modified, having to do with lifestyle, just a healthier lifestyle and good nutrition and things like that. And so anyway, they got after it, and after about 10 years of research, Dr. Bredesen laments that he had to conclude that he was wrong and his wife was correct. That there's no simple thing. There are, as I noted earlier, trying to suggest, just so many things that can go wrong that can contribute to cognitive decline, that can contribute to beta amyloid plaque, and vascular issues, poor capillary circulation to the brain, or things just not getting to where they need to be. Just so many things that can go wrong that can contribute to that you have to have an eclectic combined approach to address multiple factors simultaneously to really impact this disease process, as it were. The good news, however, is that they found Bredesen and his team, after it's been about 20 years of research now, found that by implementing a variety of these same sorts of things, diet and exercise, adding some dietary supplements that have been shown to be helpful for the brain. The study that I was involved in, by the way, that Scott mentioned earlier, we don't have a slide for that in here. Probably should have done now in retrospect, but that was a study conducted with Dr. Thomas Shea from University of Massachusetts. He was a biologist there. He used to be a professor of biology at Harvard, then was recruited by University of Massachusetts. His mother died of dementia, and so he set out to see if there wasn't something they could do to reduce the risk for Alzheimer's. And as a biologist, was looking at nutrients primarily, came up with a formula of 6 different nutrients that were essential for the brain, some antioxidants and B vitamins and a variety of other things. And they found that he found that those 6 nutrients could have a significant impact. In the initial studies with just in animal studies, they found kind of what the best combination was. And in a study with individuals in a care center, they found that out of 20 individuals, it was able to arrest the decline in about 14 of those. So anyway, some other research had implied that the good supplements might have some impact there. So Bredesen uses a variety of them. He is aware of the research showing a lack of sleep. Even a few nights of a lack of sleep can have an adverse impact on brain health, but a history of less than 6 hours of sleep can cause some significant impairment. We talked about prolonged stress can cause an increase in cortisol, which there's apparently a lot of cortisol receptors in the hippocampus where memories are formed, but stress over time and this elevated cortisol over time can do serious damage to those delicate cells in the hippocampus, which is responsible for making and receiving and retrieving memories. So anyway, so that needs to be addressed. Meditation, of course, and things like prayer can be significant stress reducers. So that was advocated. Hormones, as people age, hormones generally decline precipitously. Some research at Columbia University and other places have shown that estrogen in women and testosterone in men have a significant impact on cognitive functioning, memory. And there are a variety of other interventions, some with sounds and other things that are kind of interesting. But in this particular study that was published initially in 2014, they found that 9 out of these 10 individuals, they were able to achieve symptom reversal within a couple of years. Generally within a year, they had some progress. Usually takes 3 or 4 months to arrest the decline, and then they started to see some progress. In a couple of individuals, now early on, his research was somewhat criticized, and the skeptics said, "Well, you know," and he was careful to note that he initially did not say that he was reversing Alzheimer's disease. but only they were able to demonstrate a reversal in symptoms. That is, people improved on tests of cognitive functioning. Okay, so they were reducing the risk for dementia. But he was wise enough initially to do various studies, or for example, brain scans of the hippocampus to measure how much this was really impacting brain cells. I mean, there's been a big argument over the years that you really, if you've lost brain cells, you're never going to get them back. I mean, once they're lost, they're gone forever, etc. Even Dr. Shea told me, I asked him that on one occasion, and he said, yeah, Dave, no, there's not possibility of restoring cells in the brain. I mean, you lose them and they're gone. But that is now considered kind of old science. We do know that at least in some parts of the brain, it is possible to rebuild brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus, unfortunately in the hippocampus where the memory center of the brain. So I have noted here, there's a big slide I kind of just condensed here for brevity's sake, that these two individuals, one, in terms of brain mass or mass in the hippocampus, they were at the 17th percentile. You see, only 17% of the people at their age in the country had less brain mass in the hippocampus than they did. But after 2 years on this program, this one individual was in the 75th percentile. The other went from the 3rd percentile, having very little mass, neurons in the hippocampus, to the 84th percentile, demonstrating significant increase in brain mass, and this otherwise interpreted as reversal of the Alzheimer's or the process. By the way, I think you noted there 9 out of 10 of these people had what's called the Alzheimer's gene, APOE4. We know that people with APOE4 gene have quadruple the risk of developing Alzheimer's. I'm working at a clinic here with several families that, significant, if not most, of the aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters over 70 have significant cognitive impairment. But even in those individuals with that APOE4, he was able to achieve significant progress, basically arresting not only of the symptoms, but the Alzheimer's disease processes. And this is done mostly through non-medical means. You might want to note his site there, apollo.ahnphealth.com. 2 years ago, my MD partner and I went through his advanced clinical training for reversing cognitive decline. So we're working with Alzheimer's and other patients. In the next session, we'll talk more about that in December and some of the things that he's learned and we've learned from that. Just as to support the fact that he's not the only one that's been able to achieve somewhat similar results. This is not an anomaly, totally at least. Dr. Fotui, can you all see Dr. Fotui's slide? Hopefully you can.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Dr. Fotui, when I went to work for the Alzheimer's Association in 2009, he was the science director. And fortunately, he was a big believer in nutrition and lifestyle. He since left the Alzheimer's Association, was replaced, unfortunately, by people whose primary focus was just drugs and medication, because there was more money in that. But Dr. Fotui has continued his research. And in this study, I don't have the dates there. It was around 2016. Oh, by the way, the second, you might have noticed in the last slide, the follow-up study in 2016 was where Dr. Bredesen showed that it wasn't just a reversal of symptoms, but actually a reversal of the disease process with changes in the hippocampus. So around that same time frame, though, Dr. Fotui was working out he's in Virginia. So in this particular study, 12 weeks intervention with 127 seniors with mild cognitive impairment, using a similar combined lifestyle approach. with some neurofeedback and meditation to reduce stress. That was recognized as a major variable, and perhaps these individuals were selected for that reason. But also the Mediterranean diet, which of all the diets is probably the best empirically validated diet for brain health. A lot of research at Columbia University as well as Rush University on that. Omega-3 and other supplements. They had fitness coaching during that period, physical activity, mental activity. Most of them used computer-based programs, brain healthy activities, and some interesting programs, computer-based programs that have been developed that some research is showing can have some helpful effects. Cognifit is one of them that we use. Brain HQ is another one out of UCLA. But anyway, after 12 weeks in this program, 84% of these people showed improvement in at least 3 functional areas in terms of brain health, and 12 of the 17 had improvement or growth in the hippocampus area. So, anyway, just another confirming study. So it's not just one individual. So we're coming up on a time for questions here, but let me just share a little bit of what's happened since then. Dr. Bredesen and other partners. Now there's a study going on with about 350 individuals with Dr. Bredesen's approach right now, but in 2019 in the Journal of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, or about a year ago, they came out with a study of 100 seniors in multiple clinics around the world with various causes of cognitive decline or Alzheimer's, and in various stages on this with a MoCA score, Montreal Cognitive Assessment Score, 1 or 2 as low as 0. Showed improvement. So about 80% of these people improved in that particular study, or showed improvement, including I know one of them with who's had a MoCA score of 0. So very helpful, very hopeful, very encouraging study. And now hundreds more are being helped in more than 60 clinics around. That's much more than that. I know year before last, in the year that we went through as training, they trained over 300 doctors throughout the United States, particularly doctors in an area called functional medicine, who look at, many of these are MDs that are trained more in nutrition and looking at the body from a more holistic perspective, we might say. And this 7, we call them 7 pillars of brain health that we have interventions in, have to do with a healthy diet and good nutrition, as we've talked about. Again, physical activity, mental activity, social interaction, avoiding neurotoxins and head injuries, managing the stress, and getting a good night's sleep, which is, we found, and this was interesting to me, I'll just note on sleep, I've always been big in nutrition. That was kind of what I brought into this. Been interested in that since I was in high school, and just wanted to improve my my running speed. I set a new school record in the mile run, and I went to college on a track scholarship, so I was into just improving my physical ability to run faster. But my mother had arthritis, and so she was really interested. She was a school teacher, but she was really interested in nutrition. So that's how I got interested in that, and started when I was literally a junior in high school, really studying that. But what I found with some of our clients, we had to kind of backtrack, and we found that no matter how good a nutrition they got and physical activity, if they weren't getting a good night's sleep, they just didn't get better. So anyway, just a little note there on the importance of getting a good night's sleep. And for further information, I have a book that the doctor I'm working with and some others helped me with that I would be glad to send to you at just $10 is what we usually charge for that PDF book. It's about 140 pages now. A few months ago, but we're going to be talking some more about this next month. If you have questions, if you like to just email me, of course we'll get into more depth in the next two sessions. But what questions do we have? Do we have any questions at this point in time? See if I can answer some of those.
Yeah, Dave, Melanie asked a question.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so Melanie asked the question, what supplements besides B vitamins and omega-3 should we take?
Okay, and of course we'll go into much greater depth on those. The other primary category are antioxidants. Oxidative stress or free radicals are a major contributor for most individuals. I mean, some early studies showed vitamin C and E were helpful there. There are a variety of other antioxidants now. Polyphenols is a category of antioxidants. Something like green tea extract has been shown to be helpful along those lines. Some interesting research going on with MCT oil from coconut oil. The brain needs healthy fats. The brain is primarily made up of fats, so healthy fats, the ones that are contained in avocados, are very important. And I mentioned SAMe. That's a supplement that's available that has some interesting protective properties. Helps make the cells more sensitive to dopamine as well as serotonin as well as acetylcholine. So yeah, that's another supplement that can be of value, and a bunch more. You might want to write to me, and I can send you a list of those, or get a copy of my book, and there's the chapters in that on that.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anything?
Thank you.
Another question is, what brain exercises do you recommend?
Is there some other?
Can't hear.
What brain exercises?
Yeah.
Okay, can you not hear me?
Yes, I can
Brain
hear.
exercises. Okay. Okay, good. So keep in mind that a lot of research has shown, the Nun study, for example, Minnesota, suggested that learning new things is one of the most important things there. Puzzles can be helpful. Both jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles kind of help keep the brain, the cobwebs dusted off in there. But when people learn new things, so having a habit that causes them to learn new things. Dancing has been noted to be a helpful activity that is both physical and mental. Because you have to, especially if you're learning new dance steps, but learning to play an instrument has been shown to be helpful. But learning, some interesting research at UCLA by Dr. Gary Small has shown that learning to use a computer and surfing the internet, studying different topics, can help the brain to be more pliable. Yeah, there's and as I mentioned earlier, just reading and putting the book down and taking notes as to what a person just learned can be quite helpful. Learning mnemonic strategies has also been found to be helpful. So that's a few. Is that helpful? Hopefully.
Yes.
We'll talk some more about that probably next time, the last session. Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you.
Dave, one other question that's come in.
For this one.
Welcome.
What would you suggest for a person with dementia who doesn't have motivation to do anything?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to, I can see these here where they're coming in. Actually, I'm dealing with an individual right now. I was emailing his sons this morning before our session here, I want to emphasize the importance of looking at medications. We unfortunately missed something with this guy. His wife mentioned in the intake, first, when we sit down with somebody, it's important to do a very thorough assessment of what is contributing to this. And we have a tool that identifies over 80 different factors, but like I said, there's over 100 different things that can go wrong, and a lot of things to look at. But one of them is medications. And like I mentioned, there's a variety of them. If people are on 3 or 4 different medications, there's a good chance one of them might have a negative impact on his brain. In this particular indication, this individual was on an SSRI, Prozac, actually, fluoxetine. And actually, when I was first told that, I didn't connect the dots between fluoxetine and Prozac. I don't usually get into medications a lot. My focus is on nutrition. And my partner, the MD, he didn't really pick up on that. We were told, at least somebody told me that he was on 10 milligrams of Prozac, and we didn't think, and that was given to him because he had a history of depression, anxiety. So yeah, that should be fine. But we threw everything that I could think of. The guy didn't like taking supplements, so that was a problem. And his wife didn't like giving them to him. But one of his problems was he wasn't interested in reading anymore either. He had a huge library, loved to collect books, but he wasn't interested in that. Wasn't interested in playing games. Wasn't interested in a variety of things. And he only lives about 10 miles from me, so I started going over to see him about twice a week just to see if I couldn't get something going in terms of mental activities. We tried to get him going on his computer, but he wasn't interested and didn't have much of an attention span. But then his actually I'm fairly religious. I used to be a chaplain once upon a time in the Marine Corps. So I made this a matter of prayer, and the day after that, his wife called me up and said he was really much worse than he had been. Wasn't taking care of himself, wet his pants, did some other things that were just extraordinarily bad. And I thought to ask her, what medications is he on again? And she noted that he was on fluoxetine. And that, by the way, they had recently increased that. About 4, they increased that. He was now taking 40 milligrams, not 10. And unfortunately, a couple of days later, she admitted that, she made a mistake and was giving him, whereas she had been giving him 2 20 milligram tablets or capsules, she was now giving him 2 of the 40 milligram tablets, whereas she should have only been giving him 1, or she had mixed that up a couple of weeks earlier. So going back and looking at the research on that, most antidepressants, benzodiazepines, for example, are well known to contribute to Alzheimer's, but the SSRIs can as well, and reduce people's motivation to do things. Additionally, in answer to the question, that's also a symptom of Alzheimer's, has to do with the lack of the B vitamins, perhaps. And we know that people who have depression and cognitive difficulties generally have a lack of vitamin B12 and folic acid, okay, and B6. Those 3 are critical for that. And some of you may know, and vitamin D in there, with seasonal affective disorder. So those are some basic things that you can try. Again, a big problem is lack of energy. So doing things to improve energy in the hippocampus. CoQ10 might be of some help. People, if they're on a statin drug, then it's depleting their system of CoQ10. They're just not getting the CoQ10. Their body's not making it, because the statins not only produce the production of cholesterol, but reduce the production of CoQ10. And other things can help CoQ10. SAMe may be helpful. Niacin is helpful, and something called NADH. There are, a variety of things that can help with production of energy in the hippocampus, and those might then, if the brain has a little more energy, It might feel more like doing other things. So hopefully that's helpful.
Oh, yes.
Let's see. I'll be requesting. Okay, some people are saying keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's see. Anything else? Finally, hopefully some of that was helpful.
Yes.
Very.
Very.
Good. Yeah, the point is, I just want to, in the last minute here, just want to reinforce the fact that, and hopefully my answers to the last few questions help you understand that despite what you may have heard from the traditional medical sources, who I think are, many of whom are unfortunately jealous of Dr. Bredesen and Dr. Fotui and their research, because that's foreign to what they've been locked into. But there is now a lot of research that's going on in this field, and we're learning a lot about many different things that can be helpful to reduce the risk for Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, and even help those that are suffering from that. But it's very important to get it as soon as possible. If you're working with individuals, that's what you want to emphasize. There's a lot of things out there. Dr. Bredesen has a couple of books out. One good book is called The End of Alzheimer's. Then The End of Alzheimer's Program is another good book. And our book, well, and there's just a lot of good information out there, but people need to get into it, start learning about it, get connected with people that can help them with that, because the sooner the better. The more they har and delay, unfortunately, the harder it is to turn that around. So but the good news is much that can be done. So
Great.
Thanks for tuning in. Anything else, Scott?
Can you hear me okay?
Let's see.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I just posted the
All right, and you put the
to the next session.
The link there, right.
September 11th.
Groupthera.com, /session.
Thank you.
Yeah, / protocols for reversing cognitive decline. Yeah, so if they go to that groupthera.com, they should be able to see that listed there, right?
Yeah, correct. Or just click on that link and it'll take you straight to that session to register.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Hey.
Should be fun.
Well, very good. Well, thank you all for joining today.
Good. Hey, thanks, Ralph.